I think so. First thing I want to do is introduce the new chair for the Northwest. And the meeting is being recorded, which I like because I can go back and look at them. The new chair for the Northwest CPC will be Marcella Duarte. And with that, Marcella, you do have an audio mic, so I'll let you give a few words and then turn it back over to me when you're done.
Thanks, Jeff. Hello, everybody. Welcome. Thank you for being here. My name is Marcella Duarte. I'm the newly elected chair, and I'm super excited to be part of this great organization and group. I'm a kindergarten teacher at a local elementary school on the west side. I have 2 dogs and a cat, and before being a kindergarten teacher, I worked with lawyers and politicians. So happy with the kindergartners, I guess. And that's about it. Thank you, Jeff.
You're welcome. For those who remember, she'll be replacing Eric. Eric stepped aside after many years of good service to the CPC. And right now, Marcella is going to take the reins, and I'm sure the Northwest CPC will still continue to be one of the better CPCs in the city. Excuse me. With that, I'm going to turn it over to our acting commander. Soon, I hope he'll be the full-time commander, Lieutenant Saladin. And the lieutenant's going to go down over some informational data such as crime, speed bans, officer staffing, and community outreach programs. So, sir, the floor is all yours, and I appreciate and thank you for coming to the meeting again.
Absolutely. And I was talking to Kelly. I went ahead because there was so much data, and because Pete Gelabert is at another commitment tonight, I'll be presenting his information also. So I just put together a short 240 slide PowerPoint. I'm just kidding. It's only 17 slides. Let's see. You seeing that, Kelly? Or no, did I screw it up again?
Not quite. You bring it up. Oh, there we go.
That one. And that look like a PowerPoint?
Yep.
All right. Let's see. So I started with staffing, and this is as of today, right now. I have 59 sworn officers in the Northwest Area Command. So that's 40 officers taking your calls for service, broken down 11 to day shift, 15 to swing shift, and 14 for graveyard. And keep in mind, there is some overlap with that. Other than taking calls for service, we have 3 PRT officers. Currently, we have a vacant sergeant position. Sergeant Gabaldon retired last month. We did get our impact detectives back. That's a new thing for the area commands. They were taken out of the area commands and centralized. And just this last month, they gave them back to us. Caveat to that, I have 7 detectives, but we have to share them with the Southwest Area Command. And their sergeant just retired last week. So we're working on filling his spot too. Other than them, we have 7 sergeants, 1 lieutenant, and then little old me as the acting commander. That's what we have as of today. Good news is help's coming. So the upcoming bid will take effect on the 12th of February, and the officers just bid today, and I saw the slots. We're going from 53 to 76 sworn. I'm sorry, so we'll have 53 officers now, so that's an increase of 13 taking calls for service, broken down by 21 day shift, 12 swing shift, and 20 graveyard. And you might say, well, swing shift's a busy time. Why are we only having 12 on swing shift? That's because we have 2 swing squads that'll be as a relief as overlap during the busy periods, because the officers are now on 12-hour shifts. So there's going to be more officers on the street than we currently have. Did bump up from 7 to 9 sergeants, so that's nice. They left 1 day shift squad blank because they didn't have enough sergeants to fill them, and we all had to make some cuts, but we'll still have 3 sergeants on day shift. I do have 3 lieutenants. That's great for me. Right now I have 1. You still have me. I just got the PRT sergeant position posted, so that should be filled within the next 2 weeks. I'm requesting 2 to 3 more additional PRT officers to supplement the 3 that we currently have. And then we're going to post that impact sergeant spot also to get the detectives their sergeant as well. So here's what we've gained: 13 officers for calls for service, a couple sergeants, a couple lieutenants. And like I said, that new bid will be 12 hours, and that does benefit the coverage and the officers. Now, the shifts are long, so it's a bit rough. They do get, every other week, they do get 4 days off as opposed to 3. So that's the benefit to it. Do I have any questions about staffing?
Yes, I have one, Lieutenant. So what is an impact detective?
So they handle any felony crime that there's not a specialized unit for. The example, I used to be an impact detective and an impact sergeant. The best analogy I can think of way back when was if someone got shot and died, homicide would take it. If they got shot and lived and it was an aggravated battery, then impact would take it. Now, I think that's changed a little bit with our gun violence reduction unit and things like that, but that's kind of how it was. So any crime that takes place within the Northwest that we don't have a specialized unit for, the impact detectives will handle.
Thank you.
Any other questions? I'll move on. And if you think of something, please feel free to stop me. So here's our crime report. And because we didn't have a meeting last month, I included December and January to this point in these numbers. So keep in mind, this is about a month and 2/3 worth as opposed to just a month. So stolen vehicles, they are up 104. Residential burglaries, we're at 27. Auto burgs, 56. Commercial robberies, 31. A lot of those were during the holidays. As you can see, we've only had 6 so far in January. Same with individual robberies. We've had 9 since December 1st, but only 2 this year. And then home invasions, that was on there. I researched it. We have none so far. And then I researched it for all of 2021. There was one January 1st, 2021, and one like in November of last year. And that was all we had in the Northwest for the year. Homicides, we've had 1, and it was deemed justifiable. We had 3 shootings, and all 3 were accidental self-inflicted wounds. I researched them. They were reported at Rust or Press Now. All 3 were cleaning their guns, and 2 of them shot themselves in the thigh, and I don't know where the other person shot themselves. Stabbings, we have 9, only 3 in January. And of those 9, 3 were domestic violence related, 2 were at the West Side Homeless Shelter, and the rest were more random. So I looked at the citywide trends, and it seems like auto theft and armed robbery are up quite a bit. We did have an uptick in armed robbery in the Northwest in December. It's calmed down quite a bit now in January. Our homicides were unfortunately similar to last year, which was a bad year for us. But the good news is every other crime I looked at is down, and down in a big way. I had a question about the mobile speed cameras. I spoke with the motors unit today, and right now they have 2 for testing, and you can see where they're positioned, one in the Northeast up on Montgomery and one in the Southeast over on Gibson, and those are the prototypes. They said they don't know how many they're going to order or exactly how they'll deploy them, but it will most likely be data driven. And they're going to have some that are permanently placed. They call those static units, and some that are going to be mobile. Say one of your neighborhood associations has a complaint about speeding, like over off Unser, we'll be able to deploy those in that area as well. And it's not just going to be like the current speed trailers I have where it collects data and shows a person how fast they're going. It's actually going to be able to issue a citation. This is more of Pete's portion. Y'all want to know some of the community outreach, and here's the information he gave me. Currently 101 neighborhood or homeowners associations in the Northwest. We have over 100 neighborhood watch programs and over 100 block captains for the programs. One thing we're going to change, the way we had done it in the past was an officer would be assigned to a block captain. Well, there's just too many block captains and not enough officers. So an officer will be assigned to neighborhood associations now. And then that will disseminate down into the neighborhood watches within those neighborhood associations. So you still have the one-on-one contact. It's just going to be more of a hierarchy now where the officer can speak directly with one person who can disseminate that information, and vice versa. That person can collect information from neighborhood watches and take them to that officer. We currently have 3 neighborhood patrols, Tres Volcanas, Taylor Ranch, and Santa Fe Village. And the neighborhood patrols are something unique that I hadn't heard of before last night. And I had asked Mr. Boris if he would please speak on that.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Okay, a neighborhood on patrol is like a neighborhood block watch on steroids. Instead of just being on one block, we ride around the neighborhood. We have signs on the cars that identify us as neighborhood on patrol. We have a light in case we ride at night, mostly so somebody doesn't run into us because we're riding slow. We ride around the neighborhoods and hopefully the bad guys see us. And in my case, if they go down to Laurelwood, I'm happy. So that's our aim, and that's what we try to do. We have a booklet that tells you what to do when you're doing it. We're trained by Pete. Pete does the training of all people who want to join or start up a neighborhood on patrol. We do not carry weapons. You cannot carry a weapon and be on patrol. We carry cell phones. If we see something, we call the police. A lot of times it has nothing to do with crime, lost dog, potholes that can affect driving, things like that. And we report all those things too. So it's more than just police work. It's also community work to make sure everything is okay in our community. So we have a very big community. We're the second biggest neighborhood in the city. And it takes us about an hour to ride around the entire community, our community. And so we have a logbook. That way, if we report a abandoned car, somebody behind us don't report it also. So it's a good program. It worked for many, many years. The problem is retention, keeping people, doing this, and bringing new people in. So hopefully we're going to have some more new people. Pete said he's going to start up this program again, and we'll be able to get more people doing the neighborhood on patrol.
Thank you, sir. Another thing we have is business coalitions, and it's always bad when you spot a typo in your PowerPoint when you're delivering it, but that third one should read Cottonwood Business Coalition. So those are our 3 business coalitions here in the Northwest. I was scrambling trying to fix it while Mr. Boris was talking, but I couldn't figure it out without shutting the whole thing down. So here's another program that I was familiar with when I worked Impact, and we used our crime prevention specialists in the Northeast, crime prevention through environmental design. And like I said, it's a crime reduction strategy for homes, businesses, schools, hospitals, apartments. Basically what it is say Pete will go out to your home, your business, and he will conduct an inspection and then give you tips on how to, what they call harden the target, make it less appealing to thieves, where to put lighting, where to set up a camera, how to trim the hedges, the bushes, or the trees to make sure that your neighbors can see your car or see your front door, things like that. And this is something Pete does for free with just a phone call to the substation. So this is something that if you can push this out even to your neighborhood associations, that would be great. I know he does a good job of that, but the more mouths we have saying this, the more spread it'll be. Community events, we have been conducting Cop on a Corner and Coffee with the Cop, and that was before this last uptick in COVID. We plan to start it up again now in February 2022. And the Coffee with the Cop is nice because it's a conversation between a police officer and a citizen. And I mean, it's almost like that speed dating. When I go, I end up speaking to 10 or 12 different citizens and getting so many different perspectives, and they get to speak to different officers at different levels and get their perspective. But I do like the Cop on a Corner because it lets a citizen attend one of our field briefings and kind of see how we prepare for the shift and the information that's disseminated to the officers and kind of how we get going, and they get a little behind the scenes peek without having to go on a ride along. Our recruitment update. So currently CNM Class 6 is in session. We have 12 seated in that one. APD Class 125, which was the last class I was a part of at the Academy, currently has 31 left. CNM 7 has 2 seated, but they're not scheduled to the fall. The CNM classes follow the CNM college spring and fall schedule. So they'll start one every January and one every August. Let's see. And what that means, there's 2 seated, so 2 have passed everything. 18 have passed chief selection. So that means they're still pending their medical and their physical testing. And then 24 in the background process, which means they're still assigned to a background investigator awaiting their chief selection. It used to be chief selection was the final step, and then you did your medical, your psychological, and that was it. But now with HIPAA laws, even the psychological has to come after chief selection because that's when they get their conditional offer of employment. We do have a PSA coming out. I think they're waiting to have 20 seated before they start. So tentatively this summer. And that's one thing I didn't mention in the staffing because they're not sworn, but we currently have 2 PSAs and we did retain both of those positions for the next bid. Lateral class, they have 12 in the background process. I imagine from my experience at the academy, once they have as few as 4 or 5, they'll start a lateral class. And that usually only lasts 6 weeks before they go on to OJT. And then APD class 126, so far they have 18 who have passed chief selection, 24 more in the background process. I imagine that'll come towards the fall also. And the goal when I was there was always to seat 60 for each class. So as many as we could get, trying to cap it at 60. I think the largest class I saw was maybe a year and a half ago. We seated 70. And it was just an insane amount of cadets for the staff to deal with. So 60 is where we started capping it. And that's all I have. Do I have any questions about any of that?
Sir, I don't know if you can see the chat. If you can, that'd be great. We'll go down over
Let me give you
where the
real
first
quick.
one. Yeah.
I'm sure I can.
If you can, then that way I can let you read the question yourself and give the answer. I'll try to read them as long as they're not too long. Let's see, the first comment I seen was a comment about the Taylor Ranch Patrol was discontinued several years ago due to insurance restrictions. I know you showed that as still being active. I don't know if it is or it isn't anymore.
Well, I would have to check with Pete, to be honest with you.
Yeah, okay.
That's unfortunate if it was.
Yeah. All right, and then we have a panelist that says, I would love to do patrols. Okay, so I would say that if you live in one of the areas where, Tom, can you tell them how to get signed up with you? Or, I mean, normally they just patrol the area of in which they live. Is that not correct? Or
yes,
you take the floor on that.
In the neighborhood where you live, but you got to go through Pete. Pete will organize it unless if they live in my neighborhood, they can contact me. If we get enough people, Pete will do the training, and then you could join the patrol.
And his training only takes, I think I went to one session on a Saturday. I think it was like 4 hours, if that.
Yeah.
Is that right, Tom? Yeah. So they know what kind of time they will be investing with Pete. Okay. All right. So you live in Taylor Ranch and golf course in Paseo. I'm not sure if there's a patrol that covers that area there.
So what I will do is I'll put my email and Pete's email in the chat.
Yeah, there you go,
and
sir.
Any questions about neighborhood patrols, about neighborhood watches or neighborhood associations, can go to him. And I did see one about how will an HOA be notified of the officer's name and phone number. So when the new bid starts, Pete will assign officers to each neighborhood association, and the officer will be reaching out.
Okay. All right. Contact information, you're going to provide that. Thank you, sir. The areas. All right, Kelly, that's. What did I skip? We skipped to question. I don't know what to. Someone's saying that we skipped. I'm trying to find it. All right, we addressed the HOA, so there. Golf course. What
regarding the to whom or how will the HOA be notified of the officer's name and phone number?
I think we just covered that one. Like I said, when the bid starts, Pete will assign the officers, and the officers will reach out. Okay.
And how we sign up, Lieutenant's going to put that in there. Sir, if we would, can you give a little bit of guidance? We have quite a few from the public that may not have ever heard it, but a little bit of guidance, like the auto theft, what people can do to help maybe curb that number, precautions to take, things as such that you can give them your area of expertise on.
Well, honestly, this time of year, is when we get a lot of the warm-up thefts. So you start your car and you leave it running in the driveway and they come break the window and take it. I mean, it happens. It happened in my mother's neighborhood quite a bit when I was an impact detective. And that's just something that a lot of those, they're looking for them, and some of them are just crimes of opportunity. So I know it's no fun to get into the cold car, but it's safer that way. Making sure you lock your car, making sure you don't leave anything out. Don't leave your keys laying around. It used to be they were hitting the gyms when they had the little tag boards to hang your keys up. And the gyms finally got smart and started just buzzing people in instead. So make it as difficult as possible for the thief to take your car. Another thing, tinted windows do help because then they can't see inside as well. I like to put up my sunshade too, keep it a mystery what's in there as opposed to making it interesting for them. At night, park under a light if possible or near a camera. Any little thing you can do to deter or make your car less desirable to the thief.
Okay. Thank you, sir. I agree with that. That's quite a bit, you know, when you make it inviting, they come in and get. So I see here a comment, how do you know who in the HOA to contact? If you're the neighborhood in which you live, because we have, like you showed, 100 neighborhood associations, you know, I would suggest that you look at your website or, you know, your neighborhood association, and there's on the city, there should be a website that shows all the neighborhood association and who their board is, their president, vice president, and such like that. Because I don't believe I have a listing. I know I don't have a listing of all the neighborhood association contact people for the Northwest.
And on top
sir,
of that,
anything to add? Go ahead.
Absolutely. Pete does have a list of all the HOAs, their presidents, and their boundaries. So I'll put his email in the chat. If you shoot him an email with your address where you live, he'll give you a name and number of whom to contact.
Thank you, sir. And then we have another question. I don't know, this could have been covered in the other stats, but the catalytic converter thefts,
That's a personal
it seems
one
like
for
they
me.
peak and then they go. Yeah.
That's a personal one for me because it actually happened to me right off the side of my house with 2 marked patrol cars next to my truck. And they got under there and cut it off. And I had no idea until I started my truck and it sounded like an old motorboat. So just like anything, after that, that's when I really started paying attention to lights, cameras, talking to my neighbors. Communication is key. You know, at 4 in the morning, your neighbors may not see them, but they may have a Ring camera that does. So, I mean, my house now is covered with lights and cameras, and then I know my neighbors very well, and I know which ones have similar cameras and get that information to me. So, I mean, that's honestly my best advice would be get to know your neighbors and then invest a little bit in your home security.
Thank you, sir. And I'll just add to that. I know we instituted Neighborhood Watch on my street. I became the black captain. There's 43 houses. And since we instituted Neighborhood Watch 3 years ago, the theft crime on vehicles, break-ins and stuff like that went down. It does work. It takes the community and your own individual street to make it work. So Pete too can also help you organize a neighborhood watch if anybody would like to do that. They are effective, and I watched it firsthand how it helped the street I live on. So, all right, I think we got through all the questions there that I can see. I don't see anywhere else. Sir, I'd like to thank you, and it looks like your staffing's getting better, which is something that we've harped on for years. I'm glad to see your numbers increase to such that we'll have more officers patrolling and available for calls for service to the largest geographical section of the city, which I know it's been tough. So with that, we're going to move on. And last week was Human Trafficking Day, and this month is considered Human Trafficking Month. With that in mind, I invited Lieutenant Jones to come, and he's the head of the Human Trafficking Division for APD, And I thought, you know, if he could give a little presentation, you know, some of you may have been victims or have family members that are victims of human trafficking in one form or another. But I thought I'd ask Lieutenant Jones, who accepted. And with that, sir, I'm going to turn it over to you, Lieutenant Jones.
Hey, thanks, Jeff. I appreciate it. So I brought the experts with me. I'm by no means an expert. We have a couple of important guests today. I brought Lieutenant Ryan Nelson, who's actually the lieutenant over the Vice Unit, which covers our human trafficking. And then there's also one of the detectives who investigates human trafficking on a daily basis. So they're here with us today and give you a brief overview. I can just tell you, and I'm going to turn it over to them, that human trafficking is something that in the city we are obviously very concerned with and we take very seriously. And a lot of people don't know the measures that we as a police department take to address those types of crime. Some of which we can go into and some of which we can't. But understand that we do have dedicated individuals who are working on a 24/7, 365 basis to help curb this issue that's going on, not only in our community, but in communities all over the world. So with that, Ryan and Hector, if you guys want to jump in.
Thank you, Commander. This is Ryan Nelson. I'm the lieutenant over our Vice Unit, which handles all the city's human trafficking issues. We also do, we used to primarily work with prostitution and do John Ops and arrest prostitutes. And over time, we realized that that really wasn't benefiting anyone in our community, arresting prostitutes over and over again. And we found that there was a much greater need to address the human trafficking issue. And so that's what we started to do. And we work closely with our federal partners at the FBI and Homeland Security investigations. And we address human trafficking issues at a large scale and small scale as we encounter them. So there's probably more questions, I think, in terms of why you had us on. I'm assuming that there's a lot of questions as to what you guys can do. And I think that would be something that we can put on the class, and we can definitely educate a group of people as to what they can look for and identify potential victims of human trafficking. But for right now, if there are any questions, or if there's a brief overview that my detective can give, and then maybe you guys can have some follow-up questions, we can give you a more robust feeling of how APD handles human trafficking. Hector, do you have a good connection right now?
Yes, sir. Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
So this is Detective Hector Marquez. I'm currently assigned to the Vice Unit under Lieutenant Ryan Nelson. Like he said, we usually mainly target, when we do John operations, it's basically putting out an undercover decoy onto the street and targeting the customer base on prostitution instead of the prostitutes themselves or the sex workers themselves. That's more of a deterrence to help deter that crime element, essentially. Like you said, everybody in our unit is currently task force officers with Homeland Security, so we can investigate federal cases that involve human trafficking across state lines with Homeland Security. A lot of other things that we do, we do the street level prostitution, massage parlors, traveling circuits where girls travel across the country with a pimp. And that's who we mainly target, is the pimps. Basically anybody who benefits from putting a victim out onto the street is who we target, not the victims themselves.
Okay, so I have one question because I work for the federal government, and in our capacity of what we do, we recently added it into training and or surveillance by the federal government on contractors for what do you want to say, slave labor trafficking. I know when we hear human trafficking, majority of the times everybody, you know, relates to it from, you know, it's sex trafficking with pimps, prostitutes, and predominantly female with male pimps. But some of the things that we're finding in some of the areas that we're now tasked to look at is that labor trafficking as human trafficking is big. Do you, Hector, do you ever run into any of that, you know, when you do your investigations?
Yes, definitely, of course. That's something that Homeland Security really helps us with, assists us with in the investigations as well.
Okay. Yeah, because I know it's growing predominantly overseas with our overseas contractors. It is growing. One other question, Hector, did you used to always drive transport for the 47 unit?
I did.
Okay. All right. I thought I recognized your name. Yeah. Yeah, you and I spent some nights together. So, yeah. Okay. I'll open it up to the chat. Does anybody have any questions? I mean, to me, this is something important that takes place right underneath our nose, and we don't even recognize it, realize it. And these people that get lured into human trafficking in one form or another, and you correct me if I'm wrong, Hector, but they get recruited through various means, and usually when they're down and out, and then once they get recruited, they're a hostage to it. You know, the person that's in charge of them knows more about them than they realize. They'll know their families, they'll know everything, and they threaten them. Now, do you also work closely with some of the shelters, Hector, to try to get people out of human trafficking?
Yes, like we said, we definitely want to help as many victims, especially like your street level prostitution, to ensure that nobody else is benefiting from them being out on the street. There's different ways that females are recruited or victims are recruited, from pimps being nice to them or hooking them on drugs and supplying them with that drug as long as they so-called work the streets. I just want to make something clear. There's a huge difference between like human trafficking and like human smuggling. Human smuggling is something you deal with a lot on the border with illegal immigrants being smuggled across, and then the human trafficking aspect. So that's kind of the main difference between those two.
Okay. Tom, you had a question. Go ahead, because you have a mic. Just jump in there, buddy.
Okay, the first thing I want to know is how prevalent is this in the Northwest Area Command?
We don't see it too much in the Northwest Area Command, which you mainly see human trafficking and prostitution type deals is your hotels, your high-end hotels, and of course the Central Corridor is where you see a lot of the street level prostitution where females are working the street and you see Johns pull up and pick them up and drive off is where you mainly see a lot of that.
Okay, the second question is how successful have you been in stopping this?
We've been pretty successful. I think last year we rescued a juvenile victim and several adult victims during cases where we were contacted and advised of some suspicious activities at hotels or females that come across or patrol comes across a female that wants to talk to us. And that's how we come across those females. Or if we set them up, essentially make a deal with them in an undercover capacity through social media or other means.
Okay, a couple of years ago, we had a lady come down and talk to us. And now I have a question for you. Are you still arresting teenage prostitutes?
No, so like I said, we're not really targeting the prostitutes or sex workers. We're really going after the pimps, the guys that are the people that are benefiting from victimizing these people.
And what do you do when you run across a teenager or underage?
It's essentially the same process as if we came across an adult victim. Our best bet is to try and get them somewhere safe or with family. I know we had a runaway from California that was involved in some prostitution here in Albuquerque, and we ended up getting her back to her family in California.
That sounds good.
Okay, let's see. All right, so in our chat there, the public, what can the public look for, and you know, in regards to trafficking? Is there any signs that they can see? You know, anything that the public can look for that can help?
Hotels, especially. I mean, you'll have your traveling girls that usually will work in pairs, and then you'll have a separate room where a male or a pimp will basically keep watch over them. Seeing multiple males coming in and out of hotels, if you're staying at a hotel, obviously definitely suspicious to contact law enforcement. Or if a female or victim is reluctant to, it's kind of just following around somebody at a store, so to speak. Like they don't look like they're friends or family. It looks like more of like an owner type deal. Is definitely something that you would want to contact law enforcement to at least go out and talk to them.
Okay, thanks. And has the activity increased or decreased after over the last few years? You know, which that's always a good question. You know, we know our homeless has doubled, and that's according to the mayor. So do you think that has increased anything in the human trafficking or the sex trafficking?
I think wherever there's money to be made, criminals are going to try and capitalize on that. Especially with COVID, a lot of things went to social media. That's kind of where our bread and butter is, where our social media investigations and trying to contact victims through internet means, so to speak. It's kind of a decrease on the street level side. We don't see too much of it on the central corridor, but it's something that's still prevalent on the street.
And Rachel, you have a mic. You have a question?
I did. I just wondered how much of the trafficking involves children.
You'll see, like I said, we've come across a few cases that involve minors, usually around the 15, 16, 17-year-olds. I think I've come across a juvenile that's been involved in some of that prostitution, around 13 years old, that Homeland Security assisted me with, and I want to say around August. But she's a constant runaway, and that's kind of the hard thing of trying to keep these kids off the street. But it's something that you do definitely see.
Okay, I'm not sure if Hector, if you can see the chat, but let's see. In regards to trafficking, is there a problem with forced labor? Sometimes one hears of immigrants being forced into labor in restaurants, nail salons, massage parlors, etc. Is this something you found and you've been able to help influence it to get it corrected, I guess?
Yes, it's definitely something that's been found and we've come across and have investigated and currently investigating on a federal level.
Okay, because I know the one person that came and presented, Tom, the one that you were referring to that came about 2 years ago, she showed us a map of, you know, all these massage parlors and just how big that was. You know, it was amazing. And yeah.
There's about approximately, I want to say, give or take 110, 115 massage parlors in the city of Albuquerque.
Wow. Yeah, that presentation that lady gave showed how they traffic them from state to state, don't keep them places long, things of that nature. It was a nonprofit organization that was working with APD, and it seems like some of their recommendations based on what you had said a while ago about not just arresting teenagers and just arresting these girls that are being forced into doing this, that you're actually trying to help them, and you're going after the higher power, if you will, the people that are in charge, and put them in harm's way by sedating them on drugs or luring them into what they want to make them believe is a better life. Does anybody else have any more questions on out there? I know from the Northwest, we probably don't see it that much. I ran into one the other week. You could tell, in the Northwest, but she kind of left this area of the city.
Hey, Jeff, I do have one thing to add.
Yes, sir.
Since you mentioned recommendations that were given by a nonprofit a couple of years ago, the last couple of times that our guys have done some sting operations, for lack of a better word, we call them John Ops, where they go after the individuals who are trying to patronize prostitutes. I've received several complaints. When I say several, I've received a handful over the past few months when that has happened from people who are concerned that we're arresting the people who are patronizing prostitutes, saying that it shouldn't be a crime. One thing I will say is that when someone is a sex worker and has been human trafficked into the sex working trade, that's not a consensual thing a lot of times. And so when you have people who are patronizing those prostitutes, I think, if anybody knows anybody that has issues with the police going after that, realize that this is not a consensual working relationship most times. And so the people who are purchasing that act, the sex act, are just re-victimizing that person who's already living in a victim nature. So if anybody has any of those weekend conversations, I know with COVID it's probably on Zoom or whatever, but relay that it's not, it's something that those people who are going out there and patronizing prostitutes are kind of they're facilitating that crime continuing. So.
And that's a very good point, sir, and very valid. And this is for your team too. Do you have I'm sure you do. I think I already know the answer, but for the public and everybody on here that may not have thought of the question. So I'm sure you have people who monitor all the great social media things to bust prostitute rings, so to speak, and infiltrate into that manner as well, because I believe, what was it? What's the one that they put out of business? There was a social media page they put out of business a few years ago. Congress did. Backpage, right? And so I figured that, there's probably still some internet stuff out there where things are arranged. Do you pursue that avenue as well?
Yeah, Jeff, that's a great question. So what we see is, obviously we're adapting with the time around us, and law enforcement is definitely no exception to that. We see a lot of times that different crime categories are being influenced, or they're utilizing social media platforms to facilitate or kind of further those crimes. So as society changes and as those technological advances kind of improve or change things, the police department's doing the same thing. So it's always going to behoove us to have people that have the same ability as the community that we serve, right? So on a technological front, having detectives and analysts who can go and utilize social media and those kind of, like you mentioned, Backpage, those platforms, that's something that we're constantly kind of pursuing and advancing and expanding ourselves so that we can serve the community and catch the bad guys as often as we possibly can.
Okay, that's great to hear. While you were talking about that, I thought of another question. And I went brain dead on that one. But oh, I know what it was. Educational to try to reach our kids when they're in, say, 8th grade, 9th grade, somewhere along there. That, you know, I've heard of stories, you know, of people that were human trafficked and how they fell into the clutches and how they got out. And, you know, some of them, it was just, oh, you know, my mom and dad don't know what they're doing. I can be better out on my own. And they run away from home at age 10. And next thing you know, they're lured in, for lack of a better term, into a better life. And, you know, educational programs where we reach out to the kids while they're in school. Does APD offer anything to that nature?
I know, I'm sorry, Lieutenant. I know Rio Rancho Public Schools had reached out to us, and one of our detectives actually went and did a presentation block for all the high school, some of the high school classes that they had there. We haven't done anything with APS as of this moment, just because we haven't been reached out to yet.
In other words, we should encourage the schools to try to help reach the kids while they're in school and reach out to you guys, and APD will accommodate APS schools. So there's a place where our community can take and pass the word, because, you know, it's bigger than what some that may know. It's very big to what I know, and how much I had to get educated on it over the last 2.5 years. And it's not, again, it's mainly, yes, it's sex crimes, but there's a lot of labor that we are constantly looking into in the federal government, and finding contractors, you know, taking advantage of, and predominantly, you know, non-national U.S. citizens. And it's wrong, and they get prosecuted, lose contracts and such like that. But in this case, you know, it's individual families, a lot of it individual families, and a human being who gets lured in, and the next thing you know, then they're one of your homeless, they're one of the people on the streets, or, you know, you never know exactly how they got there. So does the public, anybody else on here have any more? If any of fellow council members on the board have any questions, Marcella, I know you're a school teacher. Would this be something that would fit into APS, you know, that you could do at your school, maybe lead the way?
Well, I'm a kindergarten teacher, so I don't think this applies to my class per se, but I mean, I'm all about informing our youth. So, I mean, I think something could be at an elementary level. I don't, but yeah, not offhand, my kindergartners know.
Right. Yeah. And yeah.
But I hear what you're saying.
Yeah.
I like
yeah.
that.
You know what I mean. You know,
Yeah.
let's get these kids in 8th, 9th, get them before they turn 14, because that's when they seem to know everything.
Yeah,
at least that's my opinion. But I mean, and I say that jokingly, but, you know, not a, you know. All right, with that, anything else from anybody on there?
Dr. Mack's hand up.
Yes.
Okay. Go ahead, Dr. Mack.
Piggyback off of that. Definitely in the middle schools, and I will relay that to the powers that be, because APS really, really needs to follow suit with that and request some of those presentations, and whether it's recorded and shown on a, you know, broader scale by them, you know, whatever that structure looks like, but definitely hit those middle schools. So I will follow up on trying to assist with that, because that needs to be done. I have a high schooler, and, you know, before they get there, they need some of this training. So thank you.
Thanks, Stephanie. I appreciate you being able to do something on that, because this is what we got to do to try to help our own community. Okay, I see a Q&A in another box here. Let me see if I can get to that. All right. What's this? Hey, Jeff, what are these contractors you refer to? Okay, these are the contractors that I refer to are federal contractors, and I can't name any names, but they're federal contractors that accept contracts in the United States and U.S. federal contracts abroad, and they violate every labor law that you could ever think of. Some of them. They bid at a certain price and then they pay at another price, which isn't anything illegal as long as you're paying a fair wage and paying the wage of what you bid, things of that nature. And they work them, especially overseas, because we send some of our guys over there to help whenever business gets too high. They do things of that nature. And it's not gender oriented. It could be a male or a female, but it's considered human trafficking the way they move some of the people around when you get into the federal statutes of the human trafficking laws. Okay. I think it could take place here, and I think Hector alluded to the fact that they do run across it. The FBI watches it very close as well, but anybody that's involved in contracts with the federal government that works for the federal government, we're the ones that had to take the training. Like I oversee contracts. I actually evaluate and stuff of that nature. I don't want to get into my job too much, but that's one of the things that I have to look for. That's one of the things that I'm on a team of 10, and all 10 of us look for it daily. On all the reports, but and there's a lot of them that do it, and again, mainly it's overseas. It's across the pond, but it happens more than what we realize until you actually get involved with people that take care of that. So let me see. Is there any more questions there? I don't.
I have a question.
Sure, go ahead. You got a mic. You get to speak.
So does APD report to the polarisproject.org for human trafficking?
No, we have not.
And then my other question is, do victims of human trafficking self-identify as victims of a crime and ask for help immediately?
Yes and no. So it depends. You do have your victims that really want to get out of that lifestyle and ask for help. And then you have your victims that are afraid of the consequences if they do contact law enforcement, that something's going to happen to them or their family. However, that victim's been, I guess, forced or persuaded to stay in that lifestyle. So it's kind of a hit or miss. But we have come across those victims that have just come straight forward and said, like, I want to get out of this lifestyle. This is what's happening. I'll tell you who it is and this and that. But it's, like I said, it depends. It's on a case by case basis.
And Hector, correct me if I'm wrong, but this is also pretty big in what they would call the LGBT community too. This isn't just always a trafficking where the person being trafficked is female and the pimp is male. Is that correct? You've run across all types?
Yes, that's correct. You run across everything that you can imagine.
Okay. I don't see any more questions for our human trafficking. Lieutenant Jones and Hector, Detective Hector, boy, I'm glad to see that promotion on you. I know you earned it. I'd like to thank you for coming. I don't see a need for you to stay on. I'm looking down here to make sure I don't see any more questions. Is somebody sending me one? Q&A.
Well, thanks, Jeff. Appreciate you having us on.
Oh, you bet. And, look forward to running into you sometime soon. Hector, I hope to see you again, but I know I won't recognize you. I know how I asked one of the guys about you about 2 years ago, and they said the last time they seen you, you were walking in high heels with a skirt down Central. And I know what you were doing. You were trying to catch some people. But I just thought that was funny when they told me that, and I tried to picture it, but I can't go there for that for you. But I appreciate what you guys do. I thank you for coming and presenting to the Northwest, and I hope the public got some information, and we can get some kids educated at a young age to maybe influence just that one that ever thinks of doing that they don't do it. Anytime you can save one, you save more than one. So again, Aaron, thanks, and Hector, thanks. So if you guys want to ring off, I'm going to turn it back on over to, I'm going to let Marcella, if she has anything else to say. I realize we're only coming up on an hour. We always schedule this meeting for 2 hours. We do not have to take 2 hours if the public is fine, but I know our next meeting will be the third Wednesday in February. What is that exact date? I want to say it's right before Valentine's Day, is it not?
It's the 16th.
Yeah, it's right after the 16th. On the agenda, I show that we open it on up. Is there any other matters from the public? I know we have addressed several as we were getting presentations, which I want to commend the commander. He gave an excellent presentation on the Northwest, status of the Northwest. I was a little shocked to see 104 auto thefts, but we got to work on that. We as a community have to work on it. And I know, are they still using the bait car, Dave? They still bring the bait cars in? Yeah.
Absolutely are. And that's something that we've requested, not just for the auto thefts, but for the auto burglaries as well.
Right.
And while we were sitting here at this meeting, I got word that your Northwest officers arrested an armed robber.
I think that's great.
Right after he robbed a speedway.
I think that's great, sir.
Yeah, so that was great. Down off of like Coors and Quail.
Coors and Quail, as long as nobody was hurt.
He had a machete, but no one.
He had a machete. Huh. Oh,
that's my hood. I live off of North Coors and I-40.
One less on the streets, man.
Machete?
Huh?
He had a machete?
Yeah.
You'd be amazed.
How soon do you expect that he'll be released, though, until he's out doing it again?
Oh, I'm not at liberty to say.
Well, and here's the time too, to the public and to the panelists. Here's the time to reach out to your elected representatives up in Santa Fe, because they are talking about crime in the state of New Mexico and how they want to make tougher laws. I know we always said it, I've heard it all my life, but if you call them, you're speaking for more than just yourself, because they don't get many calls. A lot of people just say, oh, they're going to do whatever they want to do. No, engage. Tell them you want tougher crimes. Tell them you want better support for the police, better equipment, more officers, because our crime is out of control. And that's been admitted by all of them, finally. And this is an election year, so maybe they'll do more. Maybe they'll listen to you better. So I encourage that. I always have encouraged that contact, and same way as your new city councilors. There's a new city council, which, by the way, they're meeting tonight. So contact your elected representatives. Whether you voted or you didn't, it doesn't matter. They represent you in your area. So
I will say,
go ahead.
Sorry, Jeff. And I will say at next month's meeting, Councilman Luis Sanchez will be joining us, and I'm going to try to get Dan Lewis as well, but Luis Sanchez is in to come to next month's meeting.
And that'd be great. Dan Lewis will come too if if he gets the invite. But do you want him? And I think both of those guys are going to work together. At least that's what Luis Sanchez told me whenever I spoke with him. And they're going to work together and forget what political party you're with. They're going to do what they think is right for the city of Albuquerque, and more so District 1 and District 5, which is all Northwest.
Yep.
So they got to work together. I mean, that represents all their people. So I'm looking for questions in here. I have another commitment. All righty, that person left the meeting, had another commitment. Do any of the panelists have any closing comments? By all means.
No, I'm excited to be here and be chair, and we're going to do a lot of great work together, guys, and thank you all for being here.
Karen, Tom, Rachel, I can't get to all the names, but you guys have a microphone, just take it off of mute and speak at will. You don't step on us. Commander, again, fantastic briefing, sir, if he hasn't already jumped off. And if no one has anything else, Kelly, do you have anything, sir?
No, I think we've covered everything, and I'm looking forward to planning the next meeting.
Yeah. Okay. All right.
Jeff,
So,
Jeff,
yes, sir.
Can we have a short meeting of just the board?
I'm fine with that.
Right.
If the board, if the panelists will stay on, and the rest of the attendees, thank you very much for coming. And
okay. Would you like me to stay, Tom, or you want me to get out of here?
No, you can stay.
Okay.
yeah, Kelly, you stay, man.
So we have a number of people who want to join the board. And I know we used to do these in-person interviews, which didn't kind of make any sense.
Right.
You want to join the board, it's a great thing. That's the way I always looked at it. You're taking up your time and you're coming on the board. I thought that was a great thing. We always looked at it as some people are not right for the board. I didn't quite understand that. I still don't understand that. I don't know how you could say somebody isn't right for the board. So we have some new people coming on the board. I always thought that the first person in, they became the next board member. And that went on. So if you've got 5 people want to come in and you got room for 4, you take the first 4 and that's it. I know we like to have these personal interviews, but they're really not necessary.
I agree.
They used to have certain requirements, like you had to go to the police academy, civilian police academy. That's no longer a requirement. I don't know what else is would restrict somebody from being on the board.
As long as you're 18, you're eligible.
What's that?
Right.
As long as you're over 18, you're eligible.
Right.
So why would we need in-person?
You have to live or work in the Northwest area.
That's
That's
right.
the only other requirement.
But you don't really need an in-person interview.
I agree with you, Tom, but because the way I look at it, Kelly, do they not already check them? In other words, they couldn't been a felon within how many? What's the time period? They, like if he was a felon that just committed an armed robbery a year ago and just got out after 9 months of serving, he can't be on the board because you guys already screened that out. Is that correct? Well, we're not going to screen that. We're not going to screen that anyhow.
Yeah, no, that was the case when we required you to go on a ride along. Nowadays, you couldn't have a warrant because obviously if you get in a cop car with a warrant, you're going to go to jail. So, you couldn't have a warrant and you could,
Little things.
and there were certain things we wouldn't take because you couldn't go through Citizens Policing Academy. But now there are truly no requirements. My feeling on this is that Tom is right 90%. Every now and then you speak to someone who's just not going to make it, who's just not right. They're going to be divisive, and you can tell their mind is just not in the right place. I don't think that I've come across one yet since I've been doing this for a year now, but I think 99% of people are fine and should just be given the opportunity. Ask them what their motivations are, why they want to join, and then, rubber stamp them unless there's something that really sticks out as negative.
Well, I didn't think that we needed to have like in-person interviews. I was thinking more something like informal on Zoom or even a phone call. But I mean, again, y'all, like, it's not out of the realm of possibility that there could be on someone,
Yeah.
But if you guys, we can go with the majority vote here. If you guys think it's okay to just kind of let everybody pass through.
Well, you kind of want to let people know what you're looking for. I mean,
yeah.
How long is this going to be? How many meetings attend? Because I'm thinking, to do this job reasonably, we're looking at 8 hours a month, 2-hour meetings and maybe 4 hours to look at stuff, read articles and that kind of thing. If somebody doesn't have that time, they probably aren't a good board candidate, right? So you let them know and you let them make that decision as to whether it's important and it's something they want to do.
Over my time, I've seen a lot of people join the Northwest Area Command, and after a couple of months, they leave because of whatever reason.
Right. You're going to have that. It's volunteer, it's turnover.
That's right. So there's turnover all the time. And
so I think informal
holdovers, but all in all, I know that you have some candidates for the board, and I just wanted to clarify that, to me anyway, you didn't need to have an in-person ask questions. I don't even know what the questions are. And when we tried to set that up citywide, remember that, Kelly, that they were trying to come up with some committees to come up with.
I remember that.
And I don't think we ever got anywhere with that.
No. Yeah, we really didn't. We didn't get far on committee work at all, which is one thing we'd like to get back into this year. But everybody has a certain amount of time. There are a few people who are really passionate about this. There are a few people who are not, and there are a few people in the middle. But it all depends on the relationship between the board members and the appliquees, and if that's the word, I don't know.
I knew what you were saying.
We allow you to make up words.
Okay, there we go. That's good.
So I see Jackie. Jackie, is it Jackie?
Jackie's there.
Should we promote her to panelists and have a conversation? When I say interview, to me, it's a conversation because it's maybe a 5-minute conversation, maybe it's a 20-minute conversation, but it's not like, tell us what your qualifications are. It is just like, hey, like, I'm Marcella, I'm a kindergarten teacher, your turn. That's what I kind of envisioned when informal interview or conversation. But let's promote Jackie and do her, and we can have one more board member. Does that work for everybody?
It works for me because I don't know her.
All right.
Okay, I don't know her either. So that's why we would all be meeting her.
Well, and I'll go back. I'd like to go back to something Kelly mentioned, and I don't know. Well, I had the name written down, but that person kind of went away and left it alone. And it was female. Back a couple months ago. Back a couple months ago, there was a female who contacted me, said she wanted to be on the board, and then she went off topic of that and started telling me about how she asked Elizabeth Martinez for help with this issue, and she went into this issue and then said Elizabeth didn't help, and then she went back in conversation to wanting to be on the board, and then she went back to how am I going to help her with her issue, And then the next month I was told by another CPC member on another board that she was throwing Elizabeth Martinez and me under the bus because we didn't help her on the issue that she had. And I have yet to see that person again. And I've invited her, and I got to go find the emails. I'd like to send her, but she never ended up on the board. And I never seen her application. No, it wasn't Jackie. No.
Oh, okay. So then let's meet Jackie. Okay, so let's not.
No, what? Hold on, Marcella. I'm sorry, but I'm going back to what Kelly was saying. Is that you do want to meet the people, because I would have loved to amend this person because she had me all confused, and that's why he's saying you want to meet. Now, the one question I do have is, what if you say, no, you don't want them on the board, Kelly? How can you stop them? I don't think you can.
We did have a controversy over that in another council that spiraled. Right. But, you know, I don't think it's that deeply ingrained in most people's mind, because they see it as an application. We took the word application website, but you win some, you lose some. And I mean, if it comes to the point where you said something that people are going to vote against you actively, it's probably a major thing, right?
Yeah.
One of the things that Mr. Rickman brought out in one of the meetings that I attended with the DOJ was that they wanted to see a little bit more diversity in the people who joined the CPCs. And that wasn't directed at us in the Northwest. That was directed on our CPC citywide.
Right.
But I think we're pretty diverse. I don't think we have any problem with that area.
Are you talking about, so diversity is a whole other issue, but let's talk to Jackie. Hi, Jackie.
You're on mute.
You're muted.
Okay, now I'm unmuted.
Yes, we can hear you.
Something's not going right with my phone this evening. Tom Borst does know me.
He didn't know you by name, Jackie. Now that he sees you, he knows you.
I'm not speaking up loud enough at Westcona, I guess. Does anybody have any questions for me?
That's where we're at.
That's okay. All right. So I lived in Albuquerque since 2004. I came from Maryland. My dad was a fireman. My mother was in the auxiliary. It was fire, everything all through my young years. And I worked in addition to a full-time job, I worked over 1,000 hours a year for a foundation for 20 years called the Pediatric Brain Tumor Foundation. And I ran motorcycle events all across the country to raise money for pediatric brain tumor research.
Well, actually, Tara Bernheisel is back on. Would you like to promote her? I think she wanted to be on also.
Sure, I'll promote her. We can get two new members. This is exciting.
Okay, Jackie, this is one of the questions that we used to always ask.
Okay.
But my first question is where in Maryland are you from?
Right between Baltimore and DC. I was born in DC and lived there most of my life. Okay. Traveled with first husband a bit for his work.
I only asked that because I travel to Maryland all the time. And I was just wondering where at. Just gee whizzing. One of the questions.
I worked for the third largest shopping center developer in the nation, which is the Rouse Company, which developed the city of Columbia. And I worked for them for 23 years.
Yeah. Anyhow, one of the questions we used to always ask, and this would be to both candidates, one of the questions was, why do you want to be a member of the CPC? I mean, I think that's a fair question to any of them, and there's no right or wrong answer.
No.
I mean, I'm with you, Tom. What do you do?
Well, I think one of the questions was, are you a politician? Are you related to a police officer? Things like that. Things that may bias you.
You're right. You're right. I forgot about that.
You don't have any bias towards you know, do you hate cops? I don't really know exactly how people would answer or how you would ask these questions. But to me, like I say, it's you want to give up your time and help. I appreciate that.
Okay, shall I speak?
Yeah, go ahead, Jackie.
Okay. I'd like to see both sides of the question. How is APD doing to get us out of the DOJ management situation? I don't believe anybody's all good or anybody's all bad.
Thank you. That sounds reasonable. Tara?
I would like to be part of this group because from my experience, I've been on the side where like I have had some issues with police, like as far as my experiences, and I would like to be part of like the community policing so I can also like share my experiences, share other people who I know that have experiences. A lot of the groups that I have been in deal with developmental disabilities, and
Tara, you're muted. No, I think that's reasonable. No, I always say nothing is ever all good, and all good or all bad, and just like nobody is ever all good or all bad. So I see both sides. And Tara, you're back with us. I think we lost you.
Yeah, sorry, I don't know what happened, but it just went off and came back on. But I've been in groups for like developmental disabilities, and I myself have a brain injury. And so I've been in brain injury groups, and I see the frustrations that some people have when dealing with police. And police are not bad, but there are things that we have to share with the police officers so that they know how to handle certain situations and what could help them in situations. So that's why I would like to be a part of this group. And that's why I'm interested in these meetings.
Thank you, Tara. Do we have, Rachel, I think I saw your hand. Do we have any other questions for Tara and or Jackie? If not, I say that I make a motion that we accept them into the council. Any objections?
I'll second that.
Thank you, Rachel. Well, welcome aboard, Tara and Jackie.
Thank you.
Congratulations. So Kelly, Kelly is the one who kind of sends out the emails and does the kind of more administrative. I'm the chair. We're going to be meeting again to talk about the other applicants. So is there anything else anyone has?
Kelly, who's the next person who asked in seniority to join? You're muted.
You're muted, Kelly.
Mike Suttle is moving over from the Valley. He just bought a house in the Northwest, and he was on the Valley CPC, so he's perfectly fine. He wants to join whenever possible. So we can invite him to the next planning meeting and do it then if you like.
I think that it has to go by kind of like, I don't say seniority, but the first who asked should be the first who gets put on.
Right.
Both considered.
Yeah, we have 4 openings, I believe. So
yeah.
More. So after Mike, and then we'll just, if you, Kelly, if you can invite Mike and then, or Michael, and then whoever applied after him.
Okay.
And then to the next planning meeting, and we go from there, and we're all communicating through email and text and open line of communication.
Okay. And what is the next date of our internal meeting?
Hold on, let me double check that.
I want to say it was February
16th?
No, that's the big meeting. Was it February? Oh, the 9th, Wednesday the 9th.
Yes, hold on.
I show it Wednesday the 9th. That's what we decided on the other day. Yeah.
Okay. Okay, sounds good.
Okay, well then we'll see you all there.
Great.
Thanks.
Very much.
This was a good meeting. This was a good meeting.
Agreed. Okay, have a good night. Nice seeing you guys. All
Thank
right.
you. Bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.